Okay, this video will be about Trump's exit from the Paris Climate Accords. Of course, Trump is the devil incarnate on Earth and wants to destroy the entire planet because he does not want to be part of this accord. I'll admit, before, I didn't really understand what the accord was. I didn't know what the provisions of it was, and I still don't fully know. I'm doing my research on it as things go on, but I wanted to get this video out. The Paris Accord. My understanding is that basically with Trump bailing out of this deal, we dodged a bullet. There's no other way of saying it. According to the UN estimates themselves, this would have afforded, this would have oh man, I forget what it would be called, delayed. Let's just say it would have delayed the rise in global temperatures by the estimated 2 degrees that will screw everything up. This would have delayed that by a couple of months or several months. In other words, it was an ineffective proposal. It was a, from what I've read, it was a boondoggle, a handout to other countries by the United States. My understanding is that people were, member countries were able to come up with their own ways of reducing their carbon footprint, because that's what's causing all of this global temperature change, is the amount of carbon going into the atmosphere. Every time you breathe out, people, every time you breathe out, you're breathing out the gas that's killing us. Thing is, there's something neat about plants. That is, they live on the stuff. Right now, in other countries, there's deforestation taking place, and this is cutting down on the amount of trees, which are what actually take in the most carbon dioxide and turn it into oxygen, which is what we live on. Although pure oxygen would kill us. Getting back to the Paris Accord, I've heard some sources say that what this accord would have done is the United States would have been made to produce solar panels. This is just one example. To produce solar panels that were not for use in the United States, but instead were to be given to third world nations that wanted solar panels. Also, I've heard different estimates. I've heard different amounts of money. $10 billion, and other times I've heard $100 billion, or the worst I've heard is $100 trillion, or something astronomical like that. By the way, all of those numbers are astronomical as far as I'm concerned, especially when you look at what the UN estimates stated would be the result of all of this. So it's like, well, do I want to waste, do I want to spend that much money for something that isn't going to result in anything? And that's what it seems like is what this accord was. And so it was kind of a bullet dodged. The hate that Trump is getting is predictable. It is very predictable how much people are just hating on Trump. What is really funny, really ironic, are the celebrities and high-level executives that are ripping into him because he bailed out of this accord, and yet fly around in their own business jets. That's ironic as hell. I don't like you polluting the air. I don't like you what you did. You're not thinking about the atmosphere, while I jet around in a G4 pumping out more exhaust and crap than my Cessna 172 does in a month of just solid flying. The jet would in one flight put out more crap than my 172. Yeah, the Paris Climate Accords, time will tell what's going on with it. This is something the media hasn't really covered with Trump. I have heard speeches, or I've heard of him stating that he wants to. At first, he wants to build up the carbon producing coal plant or coal industry and oil industry. But in the future, it sounds like he wants to put more investment into green energy. I'm trying to find where I saw this. I think it may have while he was running for president. I don't know if he's holding to this, but something tells me he's going to do it. I hope he does. Especially if we have 100 billion or 10 billion or 100 billion or 100 trillion dollars that we're not giving to Europe. That money can actually be reinvested into maybe green programs in our own country. And we could start building solar panels and all of that sort of stuff, or improving the technology on those. I have heard there are some solar panels that are basically clear glass, and so you can make windows out of them, and they produce energy. There's other things that could produce energy, not quite solar panels, but it's like piezoelectric, if you've ever heard of that. It's basically crystals that if you squish them, they produce a voltage. And just think about a road being made of these, you know, and you can have cars. As they're running over that road, they squish these little crystals, and you know, you have a whole bunch of those little crystals all wired into a net or into a power grid or something like that. You never know. You never know. It might sound like pie in the sky stuff, but you never know. And the only way we're really going to get better green energy is for our money to be invested into it, or for people to invest into it and see what the results are. You know, I mean, we already have Elon Musk with the Tesla car. Just a fantastic machine. If you've ever heard, look into them. They're actually really fascinating things. Their range is short, but their range is astronomical compared to what the electric car was when the first electric car was produced in mass market, the EV1. And the power of the Model S is just crazy. I've heard the acceleration is nuts. So, you know, if we're not doing drag races and that sort of stuff, that can be transferred over to long range, hauling capability, all of that sort of stuff. The battery technology has improved a lot. Now, battery is, in a way, a sort of a green energy. Windmills, green energy. Wind turbines. Water turbines. Geothermal. No, geothermal is a bad thing because you're releasing a whole bunch of crap into the air, and that's no good. But, you know, a tidal energy. We've got all these things that we can invest in, and we can produce things, and that would help with reducing carbon footprint. So yeah, getting back to Trump and his bailing out of this Paris Accord. I strongly recommend that people look into what this Paris Accord actually was, and I'm probably not calling it the correct thing. I think it's a Paris Climate Accord or something to that effect. What I've seen is, yeah, we dodged a bullet. That's my take on it. And now for our input from Amber on this issue.
Yay! Okay. So, I'm going to be honest. In the past, I would have seen this as devastating because I never really looked into, again, what you mentioned. Like, I never really looked into what it all entailed. I just knew that, oh, the environment, because again, I consider myself an environmentalist. I do care about a clean environment. So I would probably, in the past, have read these things and been like, oh my gosh, yeah, this is horrible. Mm-hmm. The only thing about it is, again, a lot of these, even some environmentalist groups take money and don't do much with it. Mm-hmm. And again, you have this idea of oh, well, he didn't make this agreement, so therefore, you know, he doesn't care about the environment, and there's no other way that we can care about the environment.
Yeah.
Which is dumb, is bullshit, especially if it's not going to produce anything.
Right.
Especially if it's doing the whole foreign aid where you're going into countries and not, and just letting them decide. A lot of them aren't going to vote for the environment or do policies for the environment. They're going to be focused on more factories and cheaper ways of disposing things because that makes them more money.
Mm-hmm.
And in a lot of these nations, that's how they do things.
Right.
Because it is cheapest. And that's one of the reasons why people left. Some of the companies left the U.S. Now, I agree in having actual environmental standards.
Oh, yeah.
But you got to make it you got to make it not worth their while to take their business overseas and then just pollute the world that way too, because it's not going to come back.
Right.
You know?
Like having Chinese freighters hauling raw materials or livestock, for God's sakes, to China, have China produce things or slaughter those animals and then ship them back on these ships that are, let's face it, the ships are ecological disasters in themselves. They burn dirty oil, and they produce quite a bit of pollution. And there's really no way around it. Ships are actually kind of dirty. They're not efficient things. They're only efficient because they carry a lot. This is very true. But I still don't see the sense of sending stuff over to a foreign nation and sending it back just because the labor over there is cheaper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're taking advantage.
They're totally taking advantage.
They're taking advantage of things that they can't do here because of environmentalism or even like animal slaughter practices and health issues.
Yeah.
They sideswipe that. They get past that and then bring it in. And then of course you have different trade deals which might make it cost effective. I don't know how that works.
Right.
But at the same time it's like, make it so that they can't do that, and you'll have people whine and complain. And it's really funny that, you know, a lot of the people who are like, oh, progressive, oh, taking advantage of the third world and all this stuff, taking advantage of brown-bodied people, you know, all their stuff, when that's what you're doing in the guise of, so let's say, environmentalism or in the guise of whatever, you're still producing that. Make it so that they can't do that. At least being an American company.
Right.
Say, okay, well, you can't do that. You're just going to have to do it here and follow the environmental laws here. We have them for a reason. Just deal with it. You're still going to make money, so shut the fuck up and just deal with it and then enforce the standards. So you can't have standards and be like, well, we don't enforce them here, so there's your get-out-of-jail-free card.
Yeah, there is that too. Yeah.
Yeah, you then enforce them.
It's like in my industry, okay, a good example of the sort of regulation that that businesses deal with. This is on one small little aspect of my industry. As I'm sure you guys know, I work in aviation and I work on aircraft. And at my shop, we have oil buckets in which we put the used oil that come from these airplanes. My understanding is there are 5 government agencies involved with the regulation of those buckets. 5. For God's sakes, we're just dumping oil into these buckets and dumping them into a recycle bin, a officially sanctioned recycle bin where that oil is reused in some way. But there are 5 agencies involved with the regulation of these buckets. 5. Why not 1? Why can't it just be 1? So for each of those agencies, that's several agents, all paid for by the government. They all have their own fees. And when they come in to do their inspection, we pay a fee whether we're guilty of some violation or not. Then there is the violation fee that we get paid, or we have to pay. And it can be for any little thing. It's like if the lid that we have on top of the bucket isn't quite tight enough, well, that's $500 fee for every bucket. That's ridiculous. That can kill our business. That can kill our business almost immediately. Because, oh, well, that lid isn't on there tight. Although we didn't tell you that that lid has to be on a specific way, we're still going to fine you $500 for every bucket. Instead of just saying, please in future have that lid on properly. No, it's a money-making scheme, and there's 5 agencies that do it. So, yeah, overregulation. Then, as Amber said, I too am for a cleaner environment. Hell yeah, I don't want air so thick that I can't see through it like there was in China. But I think the overregulation is not a good thing, and I don't think it's helping things, and it's definitely driving business out of this country and into places like China. And also the excuse of, well, Chinese workers work for less. Well, that's great. That's because they're not living very well. The manufacturing facilities in China are known to have suicide nets around them to stop people from killing themselves. I don't think there's ever been any such thing in the United States of that. So working conditions in China are pretty rotten, and American manufacturers are exploiting that. And it kind of makes me sick to even think that the country that I love and I would like to see continue to be a good country or get better is contributing to such misery. So yeah, that's about the Paris Accord. Bullet dodged, and I'm sure more information on it will come out. Oh, and also there's some California governors. There's a California governor. There's New York. De Blasio is also doing this. Several governors of several states are saying they're still going to implement the features of the Paris Accord. Yeah, I'm wondering how much business is going to leave those states and go to other states or go to other countries. Once again, time will tell. So, unless Amber's got anything further to say, I'm going to sign off.
No.
Amber says okay. So, have a good day, and thank you for watching.